Welcome back to the Breaking Up with Burnout podcast. If you've been here with me for a while, we are in a series. I say a while, I just did one episode, but we are in a series that's called Burnout is a Bad Romance. And today is episode 2, which we're talking about excuses that prolong burnout just as they do in toxic relationships. So glad that you're here, and let's get started. Today's episode is all about rationalizing and isolation. So what does that mean? Logically trying to rationalize, bypass things that people are doing in unhealthy relationships, toxic relationships, and giving yourself excuses that prolong exhaustion or downplay exhaustion. When I think of that phrase, I'm like, how often have I felt exhausted and bypassed that signal? And sometimes I still do that. And I'm like, you know what? Today's a venti coffee day because I'm going to bypass that exhaustion instead of doing something that may be restful that can kind of help fill my cup back up. Or lately, what I've been doing is that I am sleeping in a little bit longer because I have not been sleeping well. If you know me, my husband and I live the travel life, whether we are in hotels or RVs or our van. We are often traveling, and so this recent travel stint, I have not been sleeping well, and so I have allowed myself to sleep in an extra hour, which has helped so much in me being able to show up to work every day. I also know that is a privilege that I have. This is why I created See the Wonder, was because I could do things like this and have this flexibility. So I understand if you are listening and you don't necessarily have that opportunity, but there may be other ways that you can help with the exhaustion and help with the tiredness. And if you are looking for different ways, contact me. Actually, we have a free guide that's called a Burnout Reset that gives you some tips, and we'll put it in the show notes. So grab it. It's free for you. I'd love for you to have it because sometimes we don't know what to do when we're so burnt out. Talking about rationalization, the brain, the rational part of the brain actually goes offline. And so we're like, I don't really know what to do. How do I get out of the cycle of exhaustion? Well, our 5-step reset will help you begin with that. So I digress. Let's go back. Today, episode 2, Burnout is a Bad Romance. Excuses that prolong burnout just as they do in toxic relationships. There's so many places I can go with this, so I'm going to try to stay with my outline, my bullet points, because I could veer off in different ways. I might veer anyways, but just bear with me. I want you to think about a time you knew something felt wrong, but you justified it or rationalized it. Or I was like, well, that's not too bad. But you knew in your gut, and even after the fact something happened, you're like, I knew something felt wrong. It could be whether it was staying in a toxic relationships, staying in a draining job, or ignoring a partner's red flags. Recently, I had an incident at a little fender bender, and I knew something felt wrong. I tried to justify it because I was stressed out. A fender bender is stressful in general. Even if it's small or big, it doesn't matter. It's like you never know what's going to happen in those situations. But I felt something was off. My spidey senses were off, but I tried to justify it and try to trust the person that I was trying to navigate the situation with and do the best I can to handle it. But also I'm like, could I have done something different? Or could I miss the signs? Did I just not see the signs? So that's what happens when we have excuses for relationships that have red flags and to stay in burnout. The inner voice keeps rationalizing Think of like a workplace moment where you're like, well, it's going to get better. I'm just going to give it more time. Or same thing with a relationship. It's like, well, it's going to get better. If you ever have to say in a relationship, it's going to get better, that's a red flag in and of itself. Now, for example, dealing with conflict is not fun in a relationship, in any place. It's just not fun. That's something I don't like. I've worked really hard on working through that in life and in work, and it still doesn't feel good. But I have tools now that help me overcome, and I have language that help me overcome those situations. But often we bypass and excuse what is unhealthy and what is burnout by saying it'll get better. That was me. I will probably share this story until I'm blue in the face. But I did. I grabbed onto that thought. It's going to get better. And I thought I had to fix and figure it out. The truth is, I actually needed to pivot and make hard decisions. So I kept going probably for a couple of months to where it was unbearable. And I remember sitting in my therapist and I think I said that. I'm like, it's going to get better at some point. And I have tears streaming down my face. And so kindly and comforting and compassionately, she goes, Tiffany, when's it going to get better? And that was the light bulb for me. I was like, oh my gosh, it's not going to get better. What am I going to do? And I was like, I'm burnt out. And the veil came off of my eyes in that moment. And she talked me through. And I can remember her saying to me, you're going to have to make some hard choices. And you're going to have to make some hard choices when it comes to taking care of yourself, because you have not been. You've been showing up here, which is good. But you have to consider where you're working, the nature of the work that you're doing. Because I was working in a lot of complex trauma at the time. And I started to become known for being a person that worked with a lot of complex trauma because I could handle it. Talking about overworking, I can handle it. I can handle the intensity. I have before, I can now. Except now, I was riddled with panic attacks. I was crying all the time. I was exhausted all the time. I was not sleeping well. And I just kept saying it's going to get better. But it didn't. I got much worse before I made some hard decisions to be able to step out of the work that I was doing. And I have battled failure. And I know often people who stay in unhealthy relationships or toxic relationships, they stay in longer than they want. And then when they get out, they feel like they failed because they didn't leave sooner, or they didn't see, or whatever it may be. There is a real sense of isolation that is felt when you feel like you're failing, whether it's at your work or whether it is in an unhealthy relationship. Because it's like, I want to be able to handle this. I want to be able to do this work. I want to make this relationship work. But the reality for both is actually about making it work and pushing through to make it work. Or are you trying to fit your body? Consider, say you're a circle and you're trying to fit yourself into a square. Are you a round peg trying to fit yourself into a square box? It just doesn't work. And that's neutral. There's nothing wrong or right about that. It just doesn't work. And it is okay. I battled with a lot of sense of failure when I stepped out of that job where I got burnt out because I thought I could handle it or figure out how to handle it or just try to work through stuff. But the reality my therapist and I worked through was that it's not that we're not designed as therapists either to handle many years of complex trauma work. And I remember reading the statistic because I was working in anti-human trafficking efforts. And I had for a long time, whether I was volunteering or I was working with survivors in my work. I had for a long time, but this was different. There were other layers of burnout that was happening, and I just had to say, I can't do it anymore. And I remember breaking down to one of my colleagues that I had worked with and stayed in touch with, and she was like, Tony, it's okay. We're not designed to do this type of work all the time. And thankfully, in our field, being social workers, there are plenty of other people and there's other needs that need to be met that you can meet without sacrificing yourself in the process. And having that conversation, I remember just crying so hard. I cried a lot during this season, but I was just crying so hard because I just felt like a failure. Even like feeling like a failure, like I stayed in too long. Why didn't I see the sign? I was really beating myself up internally about it. But on the flip side, you don't know until you know, right? I didn't know until my therapist sat me down and was like, when's it going to get better? Because I kept rationalizing. That voice in my head kept saying, it's going to get better. It's fine. We will figure it out. This is just what you got to do. This work is hard. It is exhausting. You just got to keep pushing through. So here's a couple questions for you. When did you downplay exhaustion? When have you downplayed exhaustion? And when it comes to toxic relationships, isolation is often part of the equation. They get jealous about you being in other relationships. They don't want you to be in other relationships. They don't want other people's narratives in your life. So they begin to isolate you or make you feel guilty because you're hanging around your family or your friends or whatever. So a reflection question for that is, who did you stop confiding in? Okay, one more question I want to give you about this with this episode is, what's one lie you've told yourself about why you can't stop? Whether that is your job or an unhealthy relationship. Often we get pigeonholed to have narrow thinking of, well, I can't stop. This is all I have when it comes to a job, or this person is all I can rely on. What's going to happen if I can't get out of this relationship? And a lot of times in toxic relationships, they threaten killing themselves or your family or whatever in those types of relationships. And in work, it's, well, I have to work. It's my livelihood. It's my survival, which I understand that. But I want to give you a broader view, a bigger perspective, that we always have a choice. We always have a choice to pivot, to stop, to get out. There's always a choice to be had when it comes to that. And like me, a lot of the times it's the support of a therapist or a coach or someone to come alongside you to give you perspective of, hey, it's not going to get better. You're actually going to have to make hard choices. Or, hey, let me support you as you're navigating this relationship. So if you're interested in coaching or therapy, if you're in Florida, we also, Seize the Wonder has a virtual therapy practice where we specialize in burnout and compassion fatigue, but we also treat people with anxiety and depression, neurodivergence, trauma. We have clinicians that are trained in EMDR. If you know what that is a trauma modality, but also all of our clinicians that we have on our team have experience in working with clients that have trauma, because the reality is burnout and compassion fatigue sits in the middle of trauma. Trauma responses are happening because of the level of burnout that you may be experiencing. So it is a difficult life experience to be experiencing and working through. So we have that. We also have coaching. Right now we are working on neurodivergent families coaching with our coach, Lauren Powell. She is providing support for families with neurodivergent kids. And we're offering an integrated support where I'm coming in and I'm doing burnout not counseling, because it's different. Coaching and therapy is very much different. But go to our website if you want to know the difference. We have it on there. But I offer burnout. I come in and do burnout coaching with the parent because we believe that supporting the families through the systems and also supporting the parent through the burnout is very, very much important. Also, we are offering compassion, fatigue, and burnout trainings for teams and organizations. I have such a passion for navigating and helping change culture in organizations and individuals so that burnout is a thing of the past, or it can be mitigated. Often when we're in burnout, we're in survival mode, so we just do the next thing. But I'm saying, what if we shift culture and said self-care is the priority? And the work will come, and productivity will come, and retention will come as we shift into a culture of supporting our staff to not burn out. That's actually how I shape the culture in my organization. And a lot of it's about trusting that the work's going to get done, but also when you support people, people will support you. Period. And I never want my team or anybody that has a team to get to a place where there's high retention because of the level of burnout that's happening. I like to come in and do these trainings so that I can give you guys some information, knowledge, and practical tools on how to mitigate that in your organization. You can go to our website. You can email us, info@seethewonder.net. We're also on Instagram, Substack, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn, but we're going to create a organization profile soon on LinkedIn, so you can find us over there as well. As always, thank you so much for being here on the Breaking Up with Burnout podcast. This is episode 2 of our series, Burnout is a Bad Romance. Let's break up. Next time, it's going to be episode 3. We're going to be talking about burnout and bad relationships. Both trap your sense of self. Ooh, this is going to be a good one. So, all right, talk to you next time.